Status on the USS Phantom.
Today,
Multiple
that
bogies
silence was about
converging,
to
sir.
end.
Deploy
Sector
countermeasures. Aye,
749,
sir.
the Helvian Nebula. 3 months into the deepest surveillance operation of his career, Marcus stood on the bridge of the USS Phantom, his eyes fixed on the tactical display where 12 red contacts had been closing in for the past 18 minutes. 12 Crothian warships, each one 3 times the size of his vessel, each one carrying enough firepower to reduce a city to ash. They were hunting him. The display flickered. Lieutenant Sarah Blackwood turned from her communication station, her voice tight. "Captain, they're broadcasting again. Demand for immediate identification and surrender." Marcus didn't move. His hands remained clasped behind his back, a posture he'd maintained through 200 hours of service through conflicts that had aged him beyond his 40 years. "How long until intercept?" 60 seconds, sir. 60 seconds. The bridge lights dimmed to combat red. Around him, his crew of 42 moved with practiced precision. No panic, no hesitation. They had trained for this moment even if they'd hoped it would never come. Thorne Cassidy looked up from the weapons station, his tactical display painting his face in a harsh blue light. "They're charging weapons, Captain. All 12 ships. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy projection systems. If they fire at this range, stealth or no stealth, we're in the kill zone." Marcus finally turned his gaze sweeping across the bridge. His crew, his responsibility. 42 lives that depended on the choice he made in the next 53 seconds. Run, contact, or reveal. For 3 months, the Phantom had ghosted through Crothian military space, invisible to every sensor they possessed. 3 months of gathering intelligence on the most dangerous military empire in the known galaxy. Fleet movements, weapons capabilities, strategic deployments, everything Earth needed to know about the threat that could one day turn its eyes toward human space. He had not intended to be detected. The Phantom's stealth systems were designed to prevent exactly that. But sensor technology improved, and even the best camouflage had its limits. Marcus looked at the tactical display one more time. 12 ships, 50 seconds. His decision was made. "Chief Vex," he said quietly, "decloak the ship." 147 light-years away, on the Krathon capital world of Krathzor High, Commander Kralvax stood before the Supreme Council and wondered if he was about to end his career. The council chamber was carved from black stone, a massive dome that held 200 of the most powerful individuals in the Krathon Empire. They sat in ascending tiers, their 4-armed forms draped in the ceremonial armor of their stations. Compound eyes glittered in the dim light, watching him with the collective weight of 3,000 years of unbroken conquest. Kralvax had commanded fleets in 7 major campaigns over his 2 centuries of service. He had never reported a threat he could not identify. Until now. "Explain," Grand Executive Vorkath commanded from the highest seat. The Supreme Leader's voice carried across the chamber like a blade. 300 years old, his exoskeleton weathered by time, but his mind remained sharp as the day he'd seized power. "You request an emergency session. You speak of anomalies. I expect clarity, Commander." Kralvax activated the holographic display, the council chamber filled with star charts, sensor readings patterns traced in light. 3 standard cycles ago, we detected a spatial distortion in Sector 749. Our automated systems classified it as equipment malfunction. Science Officer Zaranel verified the readings personally. "The distortion is real." Silence fell across the chamber, then the clicking sounds of agitated discussion. The Krathon equivalent of human whispers spreading like wildfire. Zaranel stepped forward, young for her position at 70 years in uniform, but her analytical mind had earned her the role. She touched the control pad mounted on her forearm. The star chart shifted, red dots appearing like blood drops across the display. "The distortion has been moving through our restricted military zones, weapons testing ranges, fleet assembly points, shipyards constructing our next generation of warships." The pattern was undeniable, a straight line cutting through the heart of Krathon military power. Not random, not natural, deliberate. "This is surveillance," Kralvax said quietly. The words landed like hammer blows. "Someone is watching us. Someone has technology that exceeds our sensor networks. Someone has been gathering intelligence on our military capabilities for 3 full cycles without being caught." The implications spread through the council like ice water. For 3,000 years, the Krathan Empire had been the supreme military power in this region of space. 847 star systems bent to their rule, their fleets numbered in the tens of thousands. No species had ever possessed technology superior to theirs. No species had ever dared. Fleet Admiral Throckmar rose from his seat in the military tier. A veteran of 12 conquest campaigns, his voice carried genuine concern. "What do we know about this entity?" "Nothing," Kralvax replied. "We have only sensor readings of spatial distortions. No visual confirmation, no communication intercepts, no engine signatures. Whatever this vessel is, it operates on principles we do not understand." Vorkath leaned forward, his ancient form radiating authority. "Recommendations. I propose we dispatch a battle group to intercept. The distortion is predicted to appear next in the Helvian Nebula. 12 of our most powerful warships. We discover who they are and what they want." The Supreme Leader was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, every word carried the force of law. "Do it, but take no aggressive action unless they prove hostile. We do not know what we face." Kralvax bowed his head. Within 6 hours, 12 Krathan warships departed for the Helvian Nebula. Each vessel carried enough firepower to reduce a planet to ash. Together, they represented one of the most formidable concentrations of military power ever assembled by the Empire. They had no idea what they were about to encounter. The transformation happened in an instant. One moment, the Krathan fleet surrounded empty space, their sensors reporting nothing but the background radiation of the nebula. The next moment, a vessel appeared before them like a ghost becoming solid. On the bridge of the Crimson Sovereignty, every officer stood frozen, staring at the main display. The human ship was 300 meters long, its hull a dark gray that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Where Krathan vessels were angular and brutal, built for intimidation as much as combat, this ship was smooth and purposeful. Elegant. Alien. Wrong. "All stations report," Kralvax barked, recovering first. Zaranel's hands moved across her console with practiced speed. "Visual confirmation. The vessel is real. Scanning now. Hull composition unknown. Energy signature unlike anything in our database. Commander, I'm detecting defensive shields at maximum power." They knew we were here. They were ready. Kralvax felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of command. A chill running through his body. A primal recognition that he was facing something beyond his understanding. He activated the communications array. "Unknown vessel, this is High Commander Kralvax of the Krathan Empire. You have violated sovereign space. You will identify yourself immediately and surrender, or we will open fire." The response came faster than expected. A male voice speaking flawless Krathan, translated by systems that should not exist. "This is Captain Marcus Reed of the United Earthship Phantom. We are a scientific research vessel. We mean no harm and request permission to depart peacefully." Earth, human, words that triggered no recognition in the Krathan database. An unknown species, unknown technology, operating in Empire space without authorization. The law was clear. "You have 60 seconds to reveal your full capabilities and surrender unconditionally," Kralvax said, "or we will destroy you." On the Phantom, Marcus watched the countdown on his display. 58 seconds, 57, 56. He had hoped for a different outcome, but some species only understood one language. "All hands, this is the captain," he said, his voice carrying to every station on the ship. "We gave them a chance, they chose violence. Now we show them why that was a mistake. Hold fast, trust your training, and remember, we're not here to kill. We're here to teach." 45 seconds. Around him, the bridge hummed with readiness. Sarah Blackwood at communications, monitoring every frequency. Thorne Cassidy at weapons, his fingers steady on the firing controls. Chief Engineer Lyria Vex in the engine room, watching power distribution with the focus of a surgeon, Dr. Nathaniel Cross at the science station, his screens filled with analysis of Krathan weapon systems. The scientist's brow furrowed as he studied long-range sensor data, something anomalous in the deep space readings, background radiation patterns that didn't match stellar models. He flagged it for later analysis. Whatever it was, it would have to wait. Right now, survival took precedence. 42 people, one ship, against 12 warships that outmassed them 15 to 1, 30 seconds. Marcus thought of his son, Alex. 16 years old, studying at Earth Military Academy, probably in class right now, learning about tactics and strategy and the mathematics of war, not knowing his father was about to fight a battle that would change everything. 20 seconds. He looked at the photograph mounted beside his command chair. His wife, Elena, lost 8 years ago in a navigational accident that had torn his world apart. She would have told him to find another way. She always did. But there was no other way left. 10 seconds. All ships charge weapons, Kralvax commanded on the Crimson Sovereignty. Across 12 Krathon warships, plasma cannons powered up missile batteries, loaded energy projectors reached full capacity. Enough destructive power to vaporize a moon. 5 seconds. Marcus took a deep breath. Chief Vex shields to maximum. All power from stealth systems to defensive arrays. Mr. Cassidy, stand ready on weapons, but do not fire unless I give the order. Dr. Cross, I need that analysis. Find me their weakness. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 1. All ships, Kralvax said. Open fire. The Helvian Nebula lit up like a newborn star. 12 Krathon warships unleashed everything they had. Plasma bolts bright enough to blind unshielded eyes lanced through space. Missiles accelerated to relativistic speeds, their warheads each carrying enough explosive power to destroy a city. Energy beams designed to slice through armor plating converged on a single target. The Phantom's shields flared brilliant blue, a sphere of coherent energy that absorbed the incoming fire like a sea swallowing raindrops. On the bridge, the lights dimmed as the defensive systems drew massive power from the main reactor. Warning klaxons screamed. Damage reports flooded in from every section. But when the bombardment ended and the weapons fire faded, the human vessel remained intact. Not a scratch on her hull. Shields at 87%, Lyria Vex reported from engineering, her voice steady despite the violence they'd just endured. All systems nominal. They hit us with everything, Captain. And we held. Marcus kept his eyes on the tactical display. Evasive pattern Delta. Keep us moving. Do not return fire. The Phantom began to move. Her engines pushed her through space with an agility that shocked the Krathon commanders watching from their bridges. She weaved between incoming fire, her trajectory constantly changing in ways that made targeting impossible. The Krathon ships were powerful, built for overwhelming firepower and brutal efficiency. But they were also large and slow, designed for fleet actions and planetary bombardment, not dogfighting. How are they doing this? Kralvax demanded, watching in disbelief as shot after shot missed the human vessel. That ship is a fraction of our size. It should not be able to maneuver like that. Zaranel studied her readouts with growing amazement. Their thrust-to-mass ratio exceeds anything in our fleet by a factor of 3, Commander. And their shield technology, I have never seen anything absorb that much energy without failure. The power output required the heat dissipation, the structural integrity fields. This is centuries beyond our capabilities. For 12 minutes, the one-sided battle continued. The Krathon fleet poured fire into space, trying desperately to hit the elusive human ship. Plasma bolts scorched empty nebula. Missiles detonated harmlessly against debris. Energy beams cut through nothing but vacuum. And through it all, the Phantom danced between their shots, her shields deflecting the few hits that connected. She did not fire back. Not once. On the Phantom, Dr. Cross worked at his science station with intense focus. 45 years old, a physicist who had dedicated his career to studying alien technology, he watched the data stream in building a complete picture of how the Krathon weapons functioned. Captain, he announced, his voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the bridge, I've identified a critical weakness in their plasma cannon design. The magnetic containment field that shapes the plasma bolt has a resonance frequency. If we hit it with a precisely tuned energy pulse, we can disrupt the entire system. Marcus considered this information. He had been trying to avoid violence, trying to give the Krathon a chance to stand down, but they showed no sign of stopping. If anything, their fire was intensifying, growing more desperate. 12 minutes of holding back. 12 minutes of demonstrating superiority without killing. But mercy had its limits. He made his decision. Mr. Cassidy, target the flagship's primary weapons array. Single shot. Minimal power. I want to disable, not destroy. Thorn Cassidy's fingers moved across his controls with the precision of a surgeon. The Phantom's main weapon was a magnetic accelerator, a railgun that could launch a solid projectile at a significant fraction of light speed. It required no explosive warhead. At those velocities, kinetic energy alone was devastating. but it could also be used with surgical precision. Rail cannon charged and ready, Captain Cassidy reported. His voice was steady, but his jaw clenched with the weight of the moment. Targeting solution locked, flagship's forward weapons array. This is gonna hurt them. Fire! A streak of light crossed the distance between the Phantom and the Crimson Sovereignty in less than a second. The projectile, a tungsten rod no larger than a pencil, struck the flagship's forward weapons array with perfect accuracy. The impact triggered a cascade failure in the magnetic containment systems. In an instant, every plasma cannon on the front half of the Crowthon ship went dark. Alarms blared across the Crimson Sovereignty. Emergency crews rushed to contain the damage. On the bridge, Kralvac stared at his tactical display in shock. Half his weapons were offline. The human vessel had fired exactly once. One shot, and with that single shot had crippled his flagship. Casualties, he asked quietly. None, Commander Zaranel replied, her voice filled with something that might have been awe. The strike was precise. They targeted only our weapon systems. They could have hit the bridge. They could have hit our reactor. They could have killed everyone on board. The meaning was clear. The humans could have destroyed his ship. They had chosen mercy instead. Before Kralvax could issue new orders, another message arrived from the human vessel. This time, Captain Reed spoke directly, his voice calm and measured, despite the violence of the past 12 minutes. Craython vessels, this is Captain Marcus Reed. We came to your space in peace to observe and learn. You chose to interpret our presence as hostile. You chose violence without attempting communication. We have demonstrated that we could destroy your fleet if we wished. We have also demonstrated that we do not wish to do so. A pause, then, this is your final warning. Do not follow us. Do not attempt to locate us again. We will leave your territory and will not return. But if you force us to defend ourselves once more, we will not show the same restraint. The channel closed. On the Phantom, Marcus turned to his navigation officer. Plot a jump to coordinates Gamma 74. Maximum distance from Crowthon space. Course laden, Captain. Execute. Space around the Phantom twisted and bent as her faster-than-light drive engaged. In the span of a heartbeat, she vanished, leaving the Crowthon fleet alone among the stars. Kralvac stood on his damaged bridge, staring at the empty space where the human vessel had been. Around him, his crew worked to restore systems and assess losses, but the High Commander paid them no attention. His mind focused on a single thought. For 3,000 years, the Craython Empire had believed themselves to be the supreme military power in the galaxy. In 12 minutes, an unknown species had shattered that belief. They had demonstrated technology that exceeded anything the Empire possessed. They had shown tactical superiority and strategic thinking. And most disturbing of all, they had shown restraint. A species that could destroy but chose not to. A species that valued mercy over victory. Kralvax had fought dozens of alien civilizations throughout his long career. He had never encountered anything like this, and he knew with absolute certainty that he had just witnessed something that would change the Empire forever. The question was whether his superiors would understand that, or whether their pride would lead them down a path that could only end in disaster. The emergency session of the Crowthon Supreme Council convened within hours of High Commander Kralvax's return to the capital world. The council chamber, that massive dome of black stone that had witnessed 3,000 years of conquest and expansion, now held 200 of the most powerful individuals in the Empire. They sat in ascending tiers, their attention focused on Fleet Admiral Throckmar as he stood before them. Throckmar had led campaigns against 3 different species during his long military service. He had never failed, he had never retreated, he had never reported a defeat. Until today. Grand Executive Vorkath occupied the highest seat, his ancient form draped in ceremonial armor that had been worn by supreme leaders for 1,000 years. When he spoke, his voice carried across the chamber with absolute authority. Fleet Admiral, you requested this emergency session. Explain what has occurred. Throckmar stepped forward, his bearing straight, despite the weight of his report. Grand Executive honored council members, 12 hours ago, our fleet engaged an unknown vessel in the Helvian Nebula. The vessel identified itself as belonging to a species called humans. They possess technology that exceeds our own in multiple critical areas. A wave of clicking and chittering spread through the chamber. Council members leaned toward each other, discussing this revelation in urgent tones that built like rising water. Vorkath raised one of his 4 arms, demanding silence. How much superior is their technology? The question hung in the air like a blade. Throckmar met the Supreme Leader's compound eyes without flinching. They possess stealth capabilities that render them invisible to our sensors. Their shields absorbed a sustained bombardment from 12 warships without failure. Their weapons disabled the Crimson Sovereignty's primary weapons array with a single shot, and their maneuverability exceeds anything in our fleet. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded to know how the military could have failed so completely. Others questioned whether the admiral was exaggerating the threat. Through it all, Vorkath remained silent, his gaze fixed on Throckmar. Finally, the Supreme Leader spoke again. "Did they destroy any of our ships?" "No, Grand Executive." Silence fell. Absolute. Complete. "They could have destroyed the entire fleet." Throckmar continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Instead, they disabled our weapons and withdrew. They stated they came in peace. They warned us not to follow them." This admission brought a different kind of silence. It was one thing to face a superior enemy. It was another to face an enemy who showed mercy. Intelligence Director Morthus stepped forward from his seat in the lower tier. Younger than most council members, but his mind was sharp and calculating. "Grand Executive, I have been analyzing all available data on this human species. Our intelligence networks have found limited information, but what we have discovered is revealing." He activated a holographic display. Star charts appeared showing a small cluster of systems far from Crowthon space. Human territory consists of only 17 colonized star systems. Their total population is estimated at fewer than 30 billion individuals. By every standard metric we use to evaluate military threats, they are a minor power. Councilmember Trothar rose from his seat. A military veteran who had led successful campaigns, his forearms gestured with emphasis. "Then they are vulnerable. 17 systems cannot stand against our empire. We should strike now before they have time to prepare, before they can warn others of our existence." Voices of agreement rose from multiple sections of the chamber. The council saw opportunity, a small nation with advanced technology that could be conquered and absorbed. The benefits were obvious. If the empire could capture even a few human vessels intact, they could reverse engineer the technology, maintain their dominance for another millennium, expand their power beyond anything achieved in 3,000 years of conquest. Zaranel, the young science officer who had been granted the rare privilege of addressing the council after her analysis of the human vessel, stood to speak. "Grand Executive, I must counsel caution. We do not know the full extent of human capabilities. The vessel we encountered may not represent their best technology. If they have chosen to remain hidden for so long, there may be strategic reasons we do not understand." Trothar dismissed her concerns with a wave of his arm. They ran, they had superior technology, and they chose to flee rather than fight. That is not the behavior of a confident military power. That is the behavior of a species that knows they cannot win a real war. The debate continued for another hour. Voices rose and fell as council members argued the proper course of action. Some advocated for diplomacy, for attempting to establish peaceful relations with this new species. But they were outnumbered by those who saw only opportunity, the chance to claim advanced technology, the chance to eliminate a potential future threat before it could grow stronger, the chance to prove that the Crowthon Empire remained supreme. Finally, Grand Executive Vorkath made his decision. "The humans have violated our territory. They have spied on our military installations. They have damaged our vessels. These actions cannot go unanswered. If we show weakness now, every minor species in the galaxy will think they can defy us." He paused, letting his words settle over the chamber like a shroud. "Fleet Admiral Throckmar, you will assemble an armada of 340 warships. You will proceed to human space and deliver our terms. Complete surrender. Immediate transfer of all stealth and shield technology, and acceptance of Crowthon sovereignty over all human worlds." Another pause, then the final command. "If they refuse, you will crush their civilization and take what we need by force." Throckmar felt a cold weight settle in his core. 340 ships. It was more than they had sent against any enemy in 200 years. It was a fleet designed to destroy entire civilizations. But as he looked at the faces of the council members, he saw only determination and greed. They had made their choice. "As you command, Grand Executive," he said, bowing his head. 4 hours after the encounter with the Crowthon fleet, The USS Phantom emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. The blue and green world hung in the darkness like a jewel surrounded by orbital stations and satellite networks that represented 2 centuries of expansion beyond the home planet. Marcus Reed stood on the bridge exhausted but alert. 12 minutes of combat. 12 minutes that had ended 200 years of careful hiding. Captain Earth Defense Command is requesting immediate secure transmission. Sarah Blackwood reported from communications. Priority Alpha, Admiral Voss herself. Marcus had been expecting this. He had known that his words would trigger response protocols that had been planned for decades. Contingencies built by people who understood that one day humanity's hiding would end. Put her through. The main display shifted. Admiral Kaylin Voss appeared, her image transmitted across 147 light-years of space with only seconds of delay. She was 60 years old, her silver hair pulled back in the severe style of career officers. Her eyes sharp and calculating, studied Marcus with an intensity that made him feel like a cadet again. Captain Reed, I've read your preliminary report. 3 months of surveillance. First contact initiated by Krathon aggression. You disabled one of their warships and withdrew. Yes, ma'am. Good, you followed protocol. You demonstrated capability without excessive force. You gave them a warning they'll remember. She leaned forward slightly. Now I need you to listen very carefully, Marcus. What I'm about to tell you cannot leave that bridge. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He had served under Kaylin Voss for 10 years. He had never heard her use his first name in an official communication. Our intelligence networks detected massive fleet movements in Krathon space 6 hours ago. 340 warships assembling at their border. Based on trajectory calculations and their known FTL capabilities, we estimate 7 to 10 days until they arrive at Earth. The words landed like hammer blows. 340 ships, the largest invasion force humanity had ever faced. Ma'am, we have 18 stealth vessels, total, against 340 I know the numbers, Captain. I've known them for 40 years. Since the day we launched the Phantom Protocol and committed to a strategy of observation over confrontation. We always knew this day might come. The day when watching wouldn't be enough. Kaylin's image shifted, pulling back to show her standing in what Marcus recognized as the Strategic Operations Center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Behind her, officers moved between stations already implementing whatever plan she had activated. Colonel Riker Ashford, activate Contingency Omega, she commanded off-screen, then back to Marcus. Captain, you are hereby recalled to Earth. Your crew will be given 72 hours of leave. You will report directly to me for reassignment. Reassignment, ma'am. You're going to command the fleet, Marcus. All 18 ships. You know the Krathon better than anyone alive. You've studied them, you've faced them, and most importantly, you understand what they respect. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, found his voice. Admiral, I'm a reconnaissance captain. Fleet command requires someone who can think tactically under pressure. Someone who knows when to fight and when to show restraint. Someone the Krathon have already encountered and will recognize. Kaylin's expression softened slightly. I'm not asking, Marcus. I'm ordering. Report to strategic operations when you dock. We have 7 days to prepare for a war we've spent 2 centuries trying to avoid. The transmission ended. Marcus stood in the silence of his bridge, feeling the weight of what had just been placed on his shoulders. Command of Earth's entire defensive fleet. 18 ships against 340. Captain, Sarah Blackwood's voice was quiet. Sir, are we really going to fight them? Marcus looked at his crew. 42 people who had trusted him to keep them alive through 3 months of dangerous surveillance. 42 people who had followed his orders without question when violence erupted. Yes, he said simply, because the alternative is surrender, and that's not an option. The Strategic Operations Center beneath the Rocky Mountains had been built 150 years ago after the first contact war with the Vorkali species had taught humanity a brutal lesson about the realities of galactic politics. The complex could survive a direct nuclear strike. Its power systems could run for 50 years without external support, and its command staff could coordinate military operations across 17 star systems simultaneously. Now, for only the second time in its history, every station was active. Every screen showed tactical data. Every officer moved with the urgent precision of people who knew that millions of lives depended on their decisions. Marcus stepped off the elevator and into organized chaos. "Captain on deck," someone called, but Kalen Voss waved off the formality. "No time for ceremony, people. Captain Reed with me." She led him to a central holographic display where Colonel Riker Ashford stood surrounded by star charts and fleet dispositions. The colonel was 48 years old, his hair gray at the temples, his eyes carrying the weight of strategic responsibility. He looked up as they approached. "Captain Reed, good to finally meet the man who poked the hornet's nest." There was no accusation in his voice, just a statement of fact. "Colonel," Ashford gestured at the holographic display, "we've been planning for this scenario for 80 years. Contingency Omega. What to do if a major power discovers us and decides we're a threat worth eliminating." The display shifted, showing Earth's solar system with 18 points of light scattered throughout. "Your 18 stealth ships, the only military vessels we have that can stand against a fleet of that size." 18 against 340, Marcus said quietly. "Those are suicide odds." "Conventional tactics, yes, but we're not planning to fight conventionally." Kalen activated another layer of the display. "For 200 years we've been watching, learning, studying every species we encountered, their tactics, their weapons, their weaknesses. The Krethon rely on overwhelming force and superior numbers. They've won every engagement for 3,000 years by simply outgunning their opponents. But they've never faced an opponent they couldn't see," Ashford continued. "Never faced an enemy that could strike from stealth and disappear before they could respond. Never fought against adaptive shielding that gets stronger the more you shoot at it." Marcus felt something shift in his understanding. "You're not planning a defensive battle, you're planning an ambush." "Attack pattern Omega," Kalen confirmed. "We let them come to us. We let them think they have overwhelming superiority. And then we show them what happens when you underestimate humans." Major Irina Volkov approached from the intelligence section, a tablet in her hands. 36 years old, brilliant and relentless in her pursuit of actionable data. "Captain Reed, Admiral, we have updated projections. The Krethon fleet will arrive in 7 days, 4 hours. They're taking a direct route, no attempt at stealth. They want us to see them coming. Psychological warfare. They think the sight of 340 warships will break our will to resist." "So they don't know us very well," Ashford observed. "No, they don't," Kalen agreed, "which is exactly why we're going to win." She turned to Marcus. "You have 7 days to coordinate with your fleet commanders. 7 days to position every ship exactly where it needs to be. 7 days to make sure that when they arrive, we're ready to teach the Krethon Empire the most expensive lesson in their history." Marcus studied the holographic display. 18 points of light representing the commanders he would lead into battle. He recognized most of the names from briefings and joint operations over the years. Commander Sarah Reeves of the USS Defiant, veteran of the Kuiper Belt skirmishes, brilliant tactical mind reputation for aggressive maneuvers. Her ship would anchor the formation's northern quadrant. Lieutenant Brandon Foster would serve as fleet tactical coordinator aboard the Defiant. 29 years old, youngest officer ever to earn the position. Mathematical prodigy who saw patterns in chaos. His nervous system processed stress through physical tremors, but his mind stayed ice cold under pressure. Marcus made a mental note to review Foster's psychological profile. The young lieutenant would be critical to coordinating 18 ships in real-time combat. He needed to be ready. "What's our objective?" "Admiral, disable their fleet force, a retreat." Kalen met his eyes. "We show them that humanity cannot be conquered, that we have the power to destroy them if we choose. And then this is critical, Marcus, we choose not to. We show them mercy. We let them go home. Because the only thing more terrifying than overwhelming force is overwhelming force combined with restraint. You want them to fear our capability and respect our morality." "Exactly. If we slaughter them, we create an enemy that will never stop seeking revenge. If we defeat them and then show mercy, we create the possibility of something else. Something this galaxy hasn't seen in a very long time." "Peace," Marcus said quietly. "Peace," Kalen confirmed. "Through strength, through wisdom, through demonstrating that we're not like them, that we're something new." Over the next 6 days, Earth's defensive fleet moved into position. 18 stealth vessels scattered throughout the solar system in a perfect three-dimensional sphere. Each ship positioned at coordinates calculated to provide maximum tactical advantage. Each crew running continuous drills and simulations. Marcus spent his days coordinating with commanders, reviewing tactical plans, running scenarios through the combat simulators, and his nights thinking about what would happen when 7 days became zero. On the fifth day, he sat in his temporary quarters in the Strategic Operations Center, staring at a video screen. His son's face looked back at him older somehow than he'd been 3 months ago when Marcus had left for the surveillance mission. 16 years old, almost a man. Dad, the whole academy is talking about it, Alex said, his voice tight with controlled fear. They say a fleet is coming. They say it's bad. Is it true? Marcus wanted to lie, wanted to tell his son that everything would be fine, that there was nothing to worry about, that the adults had everything under control. But Alex deserved better than comfortable falsehoods. It's true, he said simply. A Krathon armada, 340 warships. They'll be here in 2 days. He watched his son process this information, watched fear flicker across that young face, followed by something else. Determination. The same expression Marcus saw in the mirror when he made hard choices. Are we going to fight them? Alex asked. Yes. Can we win? Marcus considered the question, thought about the 18 ships positioned throughout the solar system, invisible and waiting, thought about 200 years of preparation, of studying enemies, of building weapons that would only be revealed when absolutely necessary. Thought about Kaylin Voss and her unshakable confidence that humanity was ready for this moment. I don't know if we can win, he said honestly, but I know we're going to fight, because the alternative is surrender, and that's not who we are. Alex was silent for a moment. Then, you're commanding the fleet, aren't you? That's why they brought you back. Yes. Mom would have told you to find another way. She always did. Marcus felt the familiar ache in his chest. Elena. 8 years gone, but some losses never healed. She would have. She was smarter than both of us. But there is no other way left, Alex. Sometimes you have to stand up. Sometimes you have to fight. Not because you want to, but because everything you love depends on it. I understand, Dad. When this is over, we'll take that trip we have been planning. The Grand Canyon, just the two of us, like we talked about. Alex smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Promise, Marcus wanted to promise. Wanted to give his son that certainty, that guarantee of a future together. But he had learned long ago not to make promises he might not be able to keep. I promise I'll try my hardest to come home, he said instead. I promise I'm fighting so you never have to. And I promise that whatever happens, I love you more than anything in this universe. I love you too, Dad. Come home safe. The screen went dark. Marcus sat in the silence of his quarters, staring at the blank screen where his son's face had been. 16 years old, almost a man, growing up in a universe that was about to become far more dangerous than it had been yesterday. He thought about the choice ahead, the battle that would begin in 48 hours, the 340 warships that would arrive expecting easy prey. They were about to learn otherwise. Day 8, 0600 hours. The Krathon Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system in a formation that had crushed civilizations for 3 millennia. 340 warships arranged in perfect geometric precision, their weapons ready, their commanders confident. They had done this before. They knew how such operations proceeded. Fleet Admiral Throckmar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Fist of Dominion, watching the tactical displays as his fleet materialized in normal space. Around him, his command staff worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. No uncertainty, no hesitation. They were the Krathon Empire. They had never lost. Sensor report, he commanded. Third planet from the star shows clear signs of advanced civilization, Fleet Admiral. Orbital stations, satellite networks. Cities covering significant portions of land masses. Population estimates consistent with intelligence data. Approximately 8 billion individuals. Throckmar studied the tactical display. One world, barely defended, against the might of the Empire. This would be over quickly. Communications broadcast our demands on all frequencies. Give them 1 standard hour to respond. The message went out, translated into the human language they had captured from the Phantom's transmissions months ago. The terms were simple and absolute. Surrender, submit, transfer all technology, accept Krathon sovereignty, or face annihilation. In the Strategic Operations Center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Kaylin Voss listened to the Krathon ultimatum with her command staff. When it finished, silence filled the room. Colonel Ashford spoke quietly. They learned nothing from the Helvian Nebula incident. No, Kalen agreed. They saw restraint and mistook it for weakness. They saw mercy and thought it meant we couldn't fight. They're about to learn the truth. She activated her communication link to the fleet. 18 shows invisible, positioned in a perfect sphere around the Krathon Armada, waiting. This is Admiral Voss to all vessels. You have trained your entire careers for this moment. You know what's at stake. Our families, our world, our species. The Krathon Empire came here expecting easy prey. She paused, letting her words reach every ship, every commander, every crew member who had volunteered to stand between Earth and annihilation. Show them what happens when you mistake human patience for human weakness. Show them what happens when you threaten everything we love. All ships execute attack pattern Omega. A final pause. Then the order that would change everything. Light them up. On the Iron Fist of Dominion, the first indication of disaster came from the sensor station. The officer there stared at her display in confusion, then horror. Fleet Admiral, we are detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the system. Multiple contacts appearing simultaneously. Throckmar felt his blood turn cold. How many contacts? 18, sir, decloaking in three-dimensional formation around our fleet. The tactical display shifted to show the situation. 18 human vessels had appeared from nothing, arranged in a perfect sphere around the Krathon Armada. Each ship occupied a precise position calculated to provide maximum firing solutions. They had been there all along, invisible, waiting, and now they had sprung the trap. All ships battle formation Delta, Throckmar commanded, trying to reorganize his fleet. But even as he gave the orders, he knew they were too late. The humans had chosen their moment perfectly. The Krathon fleet was still in transit formation, designed for efficient travel rather than combat. On the USS Phantom, Marcus Reed watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. After the Helvian Nebula incident, he had been given command of the entire defensive fleet for this operation. He knew the Krathon mindset, he knew how they would respond, and he had planned accordingly. All ships commence attack. Target command vessels and communications arrays. Disable. Do not destroy unless absolutely necessary. 18 human warships opened fire simultaneously. The Battle of Saul had begun. Railgun projectiles crossed millions of kilometers of space in seconds. Energy beams designed for surgical precision struck their targets with perfect accuracy. Missiles accelerated to combat speed, their guidance systems locked onto critical systems calculated weeks in advance. The first wave of strikes hit the Krathon fleet like a hammer from the void. Command ships lost their communications arrays in bursts of molten metal and sparking circuitry. Flagship bridges went dark as power systems failed in cascading electrical fires. Weapons platforms that had terrorized dozens of species found themselves disabled before they could fire a single shot. On the Iron Fist of Dominion, chaos erupted across every deck. Damage reports flooded in from every section of the massive warship. Throckmar tried to issue commands, but his communication system was offline. Sparks rained from overhead conduits. Emergency lighting painted everything in hellish red. He could not coordinate with his other vessels. He could not organize a defense. He could only watch as his carefully assembled armada fell apart around him. All ships emergency broadcast on backup channels. He shouted into a handheld communicator, his voice hoarse. Return fire. Target those vessels. All weapons free. Some ships received the order. Some managed to bring their weapons to bear on the human vessels that danced between them like ghosts. But the coordination that had made the Krathon military so effective for millennia was gone, shattered in the opening seconds. Individual ships fired at targets of opportunity, their shots uncoordinated and desperate. Plasma bolts scorched empty space where human vessels had been microseconds before. Missiles detonated harmlessly against debris. Energy beams cut through nothing but vacuum. The human ships moved through the chaos with practiced precision, every maneuver calculated, every shot deliberate, every action part of a larger strategy that the Krathon commanders could not comprehend. On the USS Phantom, Marcus stood at the center of the bridge watching 18 different tactical feeds simultaneously. Chief Engineer Lyria Vex had modified the shield systems on every vessel in the fleet over the past 7 days. Increased efficiency by 30%, enhanced adaptive resonance protocols, made them nearly invulnerable to the weapons the Krathon were throwing at them. Captain, the Defiant is taking concentrated fire from 5 battleships, Sarah Blackwood reported from communications. Commander Reeves requests permission to break formation. Denied. Tell her to hold position. Those battleships are exactly where we want them. 3 minutes into the battle, 73 Krathon vessels disabled. 112 suffering critical damage to weapons or propulsion. The rest attempting desperate maneuvers, trying to find some way to hit targets that refused to be where they were supposed to be. On the USS Defiant, Lieutenant Brandon Foster coordinated tactical data from across the fleet. 29 years old, brilliant with mathematics. His fingers twitched over the targeting controls as stress flooded his nervous system, but his mind stayed ice cold. 5 Krathon battleships converging on his position. Their combined firepower enough to crack a small moon. And the Defiant's shields were already down to 62% from the sustained bombardment. His breath came fast, shallow. If I miscalculate this, Commander Reeves dies. We all die. Commander Reeves's voice came through the intercom, steady and calm. Trust the math, Lieutenant. The math doesn't lie. Foster took a deep breath, forced his finger still. Ran the calculations one more time. Trajectories, velocities, firing solutions. The numbers aligned like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. He transmitted new coordinates to 3 other human vessels. Watched them adjust positions with microsecond precision, waited for the Krathon battleships to fire. When they did, their plasma bolts crossed in the space where the Defiant had been 2 seconds earlier. 5 concentrated streams of superheated matter converged on a single point, where 3 of their own ships had just moved into position. The Krathon vessels shot each other. Friendly fire at point-blank range. Shields collapsed. Hulls buckled. 3 battleships went dark, their systems overloaded by weapons designed to penetrate enemy defenses, not withstand them from behind. Foster exhaled slowly. His pulse still raced, but his mind was clear. Math doesn't lie, he whispered. 6 minutes elapsed. The situation became clear to every Krathon commander still capable of independent thought. They were losing, not gradually, not after a hard-fought struggle, completely, utterly, without mercy or hesitation. Their superior numbers meant nothing when their command structure had been destroyed in the opening salvo. Their powerful weapons meant nothing when they could not hit their targets. Their 3,000 years of military dominance meant nothing against an enemy that had spent 200 years learning exactly how to break them. Ships began to break formation. Some tried to retreat, engines flaring as they attempted to reach minimum safe distance for hyperspace jumps. Others made desperate attacks, charging directly at the nearest human vessel, with all weapons firing, hoping that sheer recklessness might accomplish what tactics could not. The human vessels responded with cold efficiency, engines disabled with precision strikes, weapons destroyed with surgical accuracy, life support systems left intact, always intact. But not every shot could be surgical. Not in the case of 340 ships trying to destroy 18. The USS Sentinel took a plasma bolt meant for the Phantom. The strike penetrated, weakened shields tore through the forward section. 23 crew members died instantly. Explosive decompression. Fire. Vacuum. The USS Vanguard lost shields completely when 3 destroyers coordinated fire by accident rather than design. Railgun rounds punched through the hull. 8 dead, 37 wounded. The ship went dark, tumbling through space, trailing atmosphere and debris. 8 minutes into the battle, the USS Phantom took a direct hit. A lucky shot from a Krathon destroyer whose targeting computer had managed to predict the ship's position half a second before it arrived there. The plasma bolt slammed into the shields at an angle that bypassed the adaptive resonance protocols. Alarms screamed across the bridge. The lights flickered. Warning displays showed shield strength dropping rapidly. 87%, 65%, 52%. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lyria Vex stared at her displays with mounting horror. The shields were failing. Another hit like that, and they would collapse entirely. And once the shields were gone, the Phantom's hull would last maybe 10 seconds against concentrated fire. She made a decision that would either save them or kill them. Rerouting power from life support to shields. All decks, we have 4 minutes of air. Make it count. The crew heard the announcement, felt the environmental system shut down, felt the temperature begin to drop as heat dissipation stopped. 4 minutes, 240 seconds to victory or death. No one panicked. No one questioned. They had trained for this, trusted their engineer, trusted their captain, trusted each other. The shields surged 52%, 63%, 78%, 91%. The power meant for keeping 42 people breathing, now devoted entirely to keeping them alive through kinetic deflection and energy absorption. The Krathon destroyer fired again. The bolt hit shields operating at peak efficiency, dispersed harmlessly across the defensive envelope like rain on steel. Lyria's fingers flew across her controls, redirecting fire from multiple Krathon ships toward other human vessels better positioned to handle the load, creating gaps in the enemy formation, exposing weaknesses. Life support restored, she announced 180 seconds later. We're good. Shields holding at 91%. Her hands were steady now. The crisis had passed, but she would remember those 4 minutes for the rest of her life. 9 minutes, 30 seconds. The fleet-wide communication channel activated. Admiral Kalen Voss's voice transmitted from the USS Defiant at the heart of the formation reached every human vessel simultaneously. All ships status report. The responses came in rapid succession. Commanders calling out shield percentages, weapon status casualties. The numbers painted a picture that seemed impossible. 18 ships against 340. And the 18 were winning. Not just winning, dominating, but at a cost. Sentinel reports 23 K1A67 wounded. They're still combat effective. Vanguard is dark. 8 confirmed dead, 37 wounded, requesting immediate medical assistance. Phantom holding position, shields at 91%, all systems operational. Marcus listened to the reports, feeling each casualty like a physical blow. 31 dead, 104 wounded. Names he would have to learn, families he would have to contact. The price of victory written in blood. Colonel Ashford's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Admiral, we have 73 Krathon vessels completely disabled, 112 with critical damage to weapons or propulsion systems. The remainder are attempting to retreat. Time elapsed 11 minutes 30 seconds. 11 minutes and 30 seconds to break the largest Krathon war fleet assembled in 2 centuries. Kalen allowed herself a small smile. Victory, complete and absolute. But this was where the real test began. All ships cease fire, she commanded. Let them go. On the Phantom's bridge, Thorne Cassidy looked up from his weapons station, confusion clear in his voice. Captain, we have them beaten. We could destroy the entire fleet. End the Krathon threat permanently. Marcus understood the question. Understood the temptation. 340 warships that would never threaten Earth again if they were reduced to debris. Strategic sense demanded their destruction. Military doctrine required it. Every tactical manual ever written said you did not let a defeated enemy escape to fight another day. But this was not about tactics. This was about sending a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Stand down weapons, Mr. Cassidy, Marcus said quietly. That's not the goal. We need survivors to carry our message back to the Empire. We need them to understand what happened in here. On the Iron Fist of Dominion, Throckmar sat in his damaged command chair and tried to process what had occurred. 340 warships, the pride of the Krathon military, defeated in less than 12 minutes by 18 vessels. It was beyond humiliation, beyond disaster. It was the end of everything the Empire had believed about itself for 3,000 years. Zaranel approached him carefully, stepping over debris and sparking conduits. She had been transferred to the flagship before the mission her expertise deemed necessary for analyzing human technology. Now she had witnessed the truth of human capabilities firsthand. Fleet Admiral, we need to analyze what happened here. The humans demonstrated capabilities far beyond what we encountered in the Helvian Nebula. Their coordination, their tactics, their weapon systems, everything was designed for maximum efficiency. Throckmar looked at her with exhausted eyes. What is there to analyze, Science Officer? We attacked a superior force and paid the price, just as you warned we would. Sir, do you understand the implications? Zaranel's voice carried urgency now. The humans have had this capability all along. They have been watching us for years, perhaps decades. They knew everything about us while we knew nothing about them. And when we forced their hand, they responded with overwhelming force tempered by mercy. She gestured at the tactical display showing the 18 human vessels holding position around the broken Krathon fleet, not pursuing, not finishing what they had started, just waiting. That combination, Fleet Admiral, overwhelming force combined with deliberate restraint, that doctrine speaks to something we have never encountered before, a species that has mastered both war and peace. Before Throckmar could respond, the communications systems flickered back to life. Emergency power restored, and with it a transmission from the human fleet, not encrypted, broadcast on every frequency, meant to be heard by every Krathon warrior in the system. Admiral Kalen Voss appeared on displays across 340 warships. Silver hair, sharp eyes, the bearing of someone who had fought wars and learned from them. When she spoke, every word carried the weight of finality. This is Admiral Kalen Voss of the Human Defense Forces. You came to our home with overwhelming force. You demanded our surrender. You threatened to destroy our civilization. And now you have learned the truth. A pause, letting the words sink in, letting every Krathon commander understand exactly what was about to be said. We did not hide among the stars because we were weak. We hid because we hoped we would never need to demonstrate our strength. We valued peace over conquest. We valued life over victory. But you gave us no choice. Another pause, longer this time, the silence of 340 defeated warships filling the void. You may leave now. Return to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity will not be conquered. Tell them that we could have destroyed you all, but we chose not to. Tell them that if they want peace, we will talk. But if they want war, we will give them a war they cannot win. The final words came with quiet certainty. The choice is theirs. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nothing happened. 340 Krathon warships hung in space, their commanders processing what they had just heard. Processing defeat, processing mercy, processing the impossible reality that they were being allowed to live. Then slowly the surviving vessels began to withdraw. Some limped away on damaged engines, trailing debris and atmosphere. Others were towed by their companions, their propulsion systems completely destroyed. Within an hour, the entire armada had retreated to the edge of the system and jumped to hyperspace, leaving Earth's solar system as they had found it, defended, intact, victorious. Marcus watched the last Krathon signature disappear from his tactical display, thought about the 31 people who had died to secure this victory, thought about his son safe on Earth, thought about the future they had just purchased with blood and sacrifice. We bought you a future son, he whispered to the empty space where the enemy fleet had been. Use it well. The USS Phantom docked at Earth Orbital Station 318 hours after the battle. Marcus had spent those hours coordinating damage assessments, rescue operations, and the grim task of compiling casualty lists. 31 names, 31 families who would receive visits from officers in dress uniforms. He stepped off the gangway onto the station's main concourse, exhausted to his bones. The victory felt hollow. They had won, but the cost kept echoing in his mind. Then he saw his son. Alex Reed stood at the edge of the docking bay, still in his academy uniform. 16 years old, trying to look strong, trying not to cry. They walked toward each other. Marcus wanted to run, but his body wouldn't cooperate. Too tired, too emotionally drained, too aware of how close he had come to never seeing his son again. They met in the middle, stood facing each other for a heartbeat. Then Alex stepped forward and wrapped his arms around his father. Marcus held his son, felt the boy's shoulders shake with suppressed sobs, and finally allowed himself to believe it was over. For now. You came home, Alex said, his voice muffled against Marcus's shoulder. I promised I'd try, Marcus replied quietly. They stood there for a long moment, surrounded by the bustle of the station, but alone in their reunion. A father and son, a captain and his anchor to humanity, a reminder of what he had been fighting to protect. When they finally pulled apart, Alex wiped his eyes quickly. The news says we won. They say you commanded the fleet. They're calling it the miracle of Saul. It wasn't a miracle, it was 200 years of preparation and 31 people who gave their lives. Alex nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. I want to serve Dad. When I graduate, I want to be part of the fleet. Like you, like Mom would have been. Marcus looked at his son, saw Elena's determination in those young eyes, saw the future of a species that had just proven it could stand against the darkness. Then serve well, he said quietly. And remember what we learned today, that sometimes the hardest choice is not whether to fight, it's whether to show mercy after you've won. 6 months passed, months of recovery, rebuilding, and cautious diplomatic overtures. In the intervening time, reports had filtered through intelligence channels about upheaval within the Krathan Empire. Grand Executive Vorkath removed from power by emergency vote. Council members who had advocated for the attack forced to resign. A civilization in crisis, torn between those who wanted revenge and those who understood that revenge would only bring more devastation. In the end, moderation won. A new Grand Executive named Kelvron, who had argued against the attack from the beginning. A new council that understood the old ways had led them to disaster. And Science Officer Zaranel elevated to the council itself, her caution vindicated by events. The Krathon wanted to talk, and Earth had decided to listen. The meeting took place on Orpheus Station, an ancient structure orbiting a dead world at the edge of neutral space. Built by a species that had gone extinct 1,000 years ago, it served as neutral ground where no current civilization could claim advantage. Marcus stood on the Phantom's bridge watching the station grow larger in the viewport. Sarah Blackwood monitored communication channels for any sign of treachery. Thorne Cassidy kept weapons ready, but powered down, ready to respond, hoping not to need to. Detecting Krathon diplomatic vessel approaching from the opposite vector, Sarah reported. Single ship, no weapon signatures. They're broadcasting peaceful intentions on open channels. Marcus nodded. Acknowledge, proceed to docking bay. All crew, this is the captain. 200 years of hiding ends here. We're about to find out if mercy was wisdom or weakness. Let's make it count. The central chamber of Orpheus Station was vast and empty, built for a species twice the height of humans, or Krathon. Ancient architecture stretched towards shadows. The only light came from portable sources brought by both delegations. Ambassador William Gray entered first, flanked by 2 security officers. Marcus followed, his uniform crisp as bearing military, despite the diplomatic context. Behind them, 3 more humans, scientists, translators, witnesses to history. From the opposite entrance, the Krathon delegation appeared. Grand Executive Kelvron led them, his forearms held in a gesture of peace that Zaranel had transmitted ahead of the meeting. Younger than Vorkath, had been only 200 years old, but his eyes carried wisdom that came from learning hard lessons. Beside him, Zaranel herself, the science officer who had warned against attacking Earth, who had analyzed human capabilities with clear eyes and honest assessment, who had been proven right at terrible cost. The 2 delegations approached each other across the empty floor, stopped 3 meters apart, studied each other with the intensity of former enemies trying to become something else. Ambassador Gray extended his hand, an ancient human gesture, palm open, no weapons, an offering of trust. Kelvron studied the gesture for a moment, then reached out with one of his forearms and grasped the human hand in a grip that was careful not to crush fragile bones. The first handshake between human and Krathon, witnessed by both delegations, recorded for history. Grand Executive, Gray said through the translation device, "Thank you for meeting with us." Ambassador Gray, "The thanks should be mine. Your species showed mercy when annihilation would have been simpler. That gift deserves recognition." The formal negotiations lasted 3 hours. Territory, trade, cultural exchange programs. Protocols for resolving future disputes through words instead of weapons. Mutual defense pacts that were carefully worded to prevent either side from being drawn into wars of aggression. During a break, Marcus found himself standing with Zaranel near one of the ancient viewports. Earth's delegation on one side, Krathon delegation on the other, and in the middle, 2 individuals who had faced each other across battle lines and chosen understanding over hatred. Captain Reed, Zaranel said, her translator rendering her clicks and chittering into human speech. "I must ask you a question. The Krathon Empire has learned its lesson. We will not underestimate your species again. But I must know, you showed us mercy twice. Once at Helvian Nebula, once at your home system. Why by how?" Marcus looked out at the dead world below, wondered what species had built this station, what wars they had fought, what choices had led to their extinction. "Because we remember our own history," he said quietly. "We remember the wars we fought among ourselves before we reached the stars. We remember the terrible cost of conflict. We learned that strength without wisdom leads only to destruction. That victory without mercy creates only enemies." He turned to face her. We showed you mercy because we hope that one day when the situation is reversed, you will remember this moment and do the same. Because the strongest civilizations are not those who can destroy their opponents. They are those who can choose not to when they have the power. Zaranel was silent for a long moment. You are a strange species, Captain Reed, but perhaps that is what this galaxy needs. Something different. Something better than what we have been. The treaty was signed 4 hours later. Both delegations witnessed as Ambassador Gray and Grand Executive Kelvran placed their marks on the document. Recognition of human sovereignty over 17 star systems. Establishment of trade relations and cultural exchange programs. Most importantly, acknowledgement of humanity as an equal power in the galaxy. 200 years of hiding ended with a signature. 10 years later, Marcus Reed stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, a joint exploration vessel crewed by both humans and Krathon. 50 years old now, gray at the temples, eyes that had seen war and chosen peace. His son Alex served as a lieutenant on the Phantom, carrying on the family tradition. 26 years old, brilliant, dedicated, everything Marcus could have hoped for. The past decade had been transformative. Trade flourished between human and Krathon space. Students exchanged programs, learning each other's languages and cultures. Joint military exercises practiced coordinated defense. The galaxy watched with interest as former enemies became partners. But something else watched too. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Joint Research Station at the edge of known space, the communications officer reported. A Krathon named Velkin, whose 3 years of service had made him invaluable. Put it through, Doctor. Cross appeared on the screen, older now, but still sharp. Still the scientist who had found the weakness in Krathon plasma weapons all those years ago. His expression was troubled. Marcus, we've been tracking those anomalous readings I flagged during the Helvian Nebula encounter. You remember the deep space background radiation that didn't match stellar models? Marcus remembered. It had seemed insignificant at the time, a curiosity to be investigated later. Go on. We've been monitoring them for 10 years. The pattern is getting stronger, more coherent, and we finally managed a partial translation. Cross's face was grim. It's a message, artificial in origin, complex mathematical patterns, and the translation is concerning. Show me. The screen shifted to display waveforms and data streams, then 3 words in clear English. Warning, approaching, prepare. The signal cut off. Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. Thought about the universe that kept revealing itself to be larger and more dangerous than they had imagined. Thought about the alliance that had been forged in fire and tempered by wisdom. His personal communicator chimed. A message from Zaranel, now Earth's primary Krathon ambassador, and a personal friend despite the light years between them. Strange readings confirmed from multiple sources in Sector 447. Joint investigation. Marcus smiled, typed his response with steady fingers. Absolutely. Unknown is less scary with friends. He looked at his crew, human and Krathon working side by side, former enemies now united against whatever mysteries the cosmos held. Navigation set course for Sector 447. Full speed, let's see what's out there. The horizon turned toward the coordinates. Behind them, a Krathon science vessel fell into formation. 2 ships, 2 species, flying together into the unknown. The viewport showed infinite darkness, infinite possibilities, infinite threats that might be waiting in the void between galaxies. But Marcus felt no fear. Only curiosity, only determination, only the quiet confidence that came from knowing that humanity was no longer alone. The unknown warship that had decloaked in the Helvian Nebula had become a legend, a story told across 1,000 worlds, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous opponent was the one you never saw coming, and sometimes the greatest victory was the one that ended with mercy instead of slaughter. They had honored their 31 dead with memorial services attended by both species. The names were carved into a monument on Earth and on Krathzor, a reminder of the cost of peace, a promise to make their sacrifice mean something. In the infinite darkness of space, something else was watching, something that had sent a warning across the void, something that would test the alliance between human and Krathon in ways they could not yet imagine. The Phantom had revealed itself. Peace had been won. The galaxy had changed, but the true test was still approaching, and it was coming fast.